Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bosley.
Present.
Alderman Kennedy.
Here.
Alderman Conway. Alderman Cruzen. Alderman Moore.
Here.
Alderman Davis. Alderman French. Alderman Carter. Alderman Coulter.
Here.
Alderman Spencer. Alderman Green. Present. Chairman Rose.
Present.
8 present, we have 4.
Okay. We got our list of board bills here. Everything before us has someone on the committee handling it. So the idea would be is that we would go ahead and they're all going to have to be here anyway. So why don't we go ahead? We have our executive director of SLDC. We didn't need to go in a closed session for your meeting or anything? No? Okay. So why don't we provide him the opportunity to speak first. I think he's going to provide us an update on NGA, and then I'd also like to have a little update for the committee on the incentive study and the strategic plan and some of the other things you and I have been working on. So,
I mean, it's not going to change the, it's not going to change the analysis. No, I'm still recommending 15 years.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to provide a brief update to the committee on where we are on NGA. We are at a very good point. Since our last meeting, an update to you, the director provided an announcement that we were the agency preferred alternative, and that there was a comment period that also ended on May 2nd, where there were more than 1,500 comments that were provided to them for their review. We have been in communications with them, and they are still staying the course. We will hopefully on June 3rd be named in the record of decision as the designated site. If that does occur, then there are a whole lot of things that will happen. But I wanted to, what I passed out to you is just a brief summary, and first couple of slides of things that you already know, and why we are doing this, because I talked to you about it a number of times. I'd like to go to the page that says NGA site preparation is on the way to deliver the site. What that means, though, is that we are, in fact, finalizing some details with the loan that we have to be sure that we have funds to be able to get started. So just a review, what our requirement is, if we are in fact named on June 3rd, that we will need to be one owner, which means that we will need to have the one site with all of the properties. As you remember, the 551 parcels, there were 110 owners. We have completed the acquisition process through the eminent domain process, through the commissioner's hearing, and the commissioners have set a price or a cost for each of the properties, and we are awaiting the announcement to be able to pay into court, which will be after June 30th. So on the one owner, we think we are in good shape. We can deliver that requirement. It has to be environmentally clean. We have to remove all of the buildings. The streets and alleys need to be vacated. The building foundations and the utilities need to be removed or rerouted around the site. And we are, of course, working with all the utilities in the city to make that happen. So I mentioned the site acquisition, but the total funding, we're also working with Stiefel to help us monetize the authorities that we've been given both from the city and from the state. And we have that on course. but we cannot implement that until we in fact have a purchase and sale agreement, which we would initiate immediately after the record of decision is announced. And we have a period of time to work with the NGA and the Corps of Engineers to get the purchase and sale agreement. Essentially what that will be, just terms that we will need to negotiate with them and they with us. So once that is complete, Steeple can then proceed to monetizing, or at least getting a bond document in place so that we can get the funds that are required to do the things we need to do. So in the meantime, we have also submitted the brownfield application, have the approvals from the DED. I mentioned that we've talked with the folks at the utilities and we have a plan to make that work. And so probably key for you will be the milestone schedule that remains. I mentioned the June 3rd record of decision, and then on June 6th, what we intend to do is to have a public meeting. The announcement is out there, but it's contingent upon us being named the location. And we will have that meeting. The purpose of that meeting is really to have communications immediately with the citizens in that area, to talk about what we will be doing as far as relocation, the whole acquisition process, update with them, to get feedback from them on things that they are concerned about, to just have start a dialogue. We intend to have several of these over the course of our, until we get them actually relocated and happy. Following that day, though, on the following day, rather, on June 7th, we will have an industry forum. That forum is for folks that are in the design and construction arena, and we will invite all of them to that location. We are working with the AGC and with MOCAN and with all of the folks who have contacts with folks in this industry to be at this location on June 7th. The location I'm speaking of is the Gateway Classic Building, which is on Delmar, or MLK Road. I mentioned the negotiations of the purchase and sale agreement. We hope to have that complete in September. We will start the major site demolition in October. And from the date of the purchase and sale agreement, we have 1 year from that date to be able to deliver the site to the NGA. So a lot of activity will occur in that time frame. So there are a couple of things I'd like to turn maybe more to the current, to the topics that are in the media, just so that we all have a clear understanding of sort of where we are. That there was always a rumor from Illinois that the Pruitt-Igoe site is contaminated, but I think what they were basically saying is that
Second last page of it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was bouncing through this because much of this you guys already know, and I didn't want to.
I know I saw the presentation yesterday.
So we have been presenting to a number of entities, and so I apologize if I get you off course here. But that particular slide speaks to the Pruitt-Igoe contamination. Pruitt-Igoe, in fact, is contaminated, but it is not contaminated with radioactive waste, and which was the claim. And so just wanted to be sure we all knew that we know that we have to do some cleanup on Pruitt-Igoe. That's part of the plan. The removal of Pruitt-Igoe from the site plan. If you recall, when initially the opportunity presented itself, it was Pruitt-Igoe that had been presented by the developer, in this case the Northside Regeneration, to the NGA. And that time they told them the requirement was actually for 50 acres, and Pruitt-Igoe was the center of that presentation that had been put there. Later, as they were narrowing the sites down, they came back and said, well, we really need to have a standoff requirement, but we also need to have at least 100 acres, because I think that's the only way that we can get the standoff requirement, with the requirement for the buildings, the parking, and the security that they needed. So we immediately start to scramble along with the developer to try and find the location. So this is how we sort of got to the site that is the current site, which is north of Cass Avenue, directly across from Perdago. But we continue to keep Perdago in the discussion. So what was initially submitted to them was 135 acres that included Perdago. And but just prior to the draft EIS being presented last fall in October, if you remember, we hosted it. So we, the NGA and the Corps, hosted a meeting at the Gateway Classic, which was a public meeting. It was October 9th. But just prior to that, the Corps and the NGA came back to us and said, we no longer need Perdago. And so what was presented at the public meeting and what was presented to all of the sites during the public meeting process was that the city site is the 99 acres. So the idea that there was this late discovery by the folks in Illinois that they thought that there was a bait and switch somehow. And they were, for a few days, making a lot of hay out of it. Obviously, the issue about crime, security, that is concerned all over the city. So, but the focus, though, that they had really was more on the security part of it, which was a standoff. There is a federal regulation that was promulgated shortly after the Oklahoma City bombing, and it was updated in 2013, and it prescribes the standoff distance for federal facilities, and it talks about the types. In this case, the greatest distance that is in this regulation is 250 feet, a little over 250 feet, for the most substantial facility and the most critical facility. Our standoff distance is 500 feet, which is more than double, or at least almost double the distance. So we do not see that there is an issue, and that was verified just yesterday with the letter coming from the Director Robert Codillo, who confirmed that that is the case. And so we don't see that as a problem as well. And then the EIS process being a problem, I guess if you don't win, you talk about the process, and we sort of think of it as sort of sour grapes. But the process was followed. I believe that the director of the NGA and the Corps can stand behind. Although there were some errors that probably should not have been made, but those errors that had been identified were not substantial enough to be such that they would cause the decision to be changed. And then the last one was political influence, which was ironic in the sense that we always thought that they had the upper hand with the president being from Illinois and being close friends with Durbin and others in Illinois. And the fact that probably about a month before the decision was announced, the president and Durbin were seen getting off of Air Force One at the Lincoln in Springfield for the Lincoln Museum presentation. And so I was concerned. But the one thing that has happened, though, is that we've had strong support from our legislative body in the sense that they've been stalwarts and helping us secure this and thwarting efforts by the Illinois delegation to cause funding not to be appropriated and those kinds of things. So everything is still is on course. We've been working on a daily basis with the delegation, and there have been daily attempts by several members in Illinois to introduce things that would cause this to get off track, but we're on track. And so with that, I can answer any questions that you might have.
Alderman Bosley, do you have any questions?
No. Sure.
No question. Alderman Kennedy.
No question.
Alderwoman Cruzen.
No questions, but Otis, thank you for the shoving this. We're almost there.
Alderman Davis, any questions?
For the industry forum that you're planning, for the industry forum that you are planning for June 7th, I just wanted to make sure that we were going to give special attention to the new minority participation plan that we have in place, and that we also have an opportunity to encourage those who are interested in this project to reach out further than they've ever reached before, and for us to have, for us to demonstrate how well this can be developed with inclusion. This is something that everybody's going to have their eye on. We don't need anybody marching. We don't need anybody talking about unfairness, and it's enough work for everybody. And so I hope that we do all that we can do to make sure that that takes place.
Yeah, agreed.
Alderman French.
Yeah, question where was it? NGA preparation on this slide, the total funding of $131 million. Can you give a breakdown of that?
Yes, it's approximately 35 million of brownfield tax credits, and depending upon the market on the day that we go, we think it's between 94 and 100 million in funds that will come as a basis. The basis for that would be the up to 1.5 million that is authorized by the city. This is part of the earnings tax, and then the state is providing 5.75 million. The authority is to go up to 12 million, but currently the negotiation is at 5.75 million.
In cash or?
This is a stream. This is a portion of the withholding taxes that is provided to them on an annual basis, and so yes, that will be funds provided by them. Yes.
All right, so I'm not sure I got all that. So it was 35 million brownfield. Then you mentioned 94 to 100 million in what?
Based on the stream of revenue that I just articulated, on an annual basis.
Oh, I see. The 1.5 million and
Over a 30 year period. Yeah.
Okay.
That's basically monetize that stream.
Okay. So over the 30 years from the city, the contribution would be about
About 40,000.
Okay. And that's just from the earnings tax. Does that include then the money that was borrowed previously?
What we have in our pro forma or in our sources and uses, we get reimbursed for those things that we will have spent upfront.
Okay. All right, I got you. All right, that's all I have.
Alderman Carter, he must be over in the other meeting. Alderman Kodar.
Yeah. Otis, you mentioned that eminent domain commissioners came up with some prices for certain properties. How many parcels ultimately were subject to eminent domain proceedings?
There were 44. About 35 of those were actually sort of title issues. I call them friendly condemnations. And then there were some that were more contentious.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderwoman Spencer.
No question, Mr. Chairman.
Alderwoman Green.
No questions.
Great. So we talked about the NGA, and then Otis, if it's okay, I don't think it was on our agenda, but since we're not taking any action on it, I think it's okay if we just, if you can give us an update. You and I have talked frequently about this, but the incentive program and the strategic plan and kind of how that all is planning out.
Okay. All right. On the incentive program, as many of you know, that we commissioned a study a little over a year ago. We have that complete. We are beginning to have discussions with various groups, and we are, in fact, will be inviting, we will designate several dates for invitations to the Board of Aldermen to come, very similar to what we did with NGA, where we can get in very detailed discussions about the components of the incentive study. And because this one is about numbers and about, I call it, the programs that we have, and sort of understand what we found. So the link to the study is up on our website. I believe that we provided a copy. Bill, did we send a copy to everyone?
I don't know that all the committee members have got one, but we'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, if you would, just make direct mail to each of them, but it is available. And so we will, though, invite each of you there. So we have started to have discussions with both the development community and folks who are that basically support the analysis part of this and the financial community. To have a look at it, but we also want to talk to each of the aldermanic groups to have that feedback, but we will continue to take feedback and refine what we're doing in this process.
Otis, a couple things. I think first off is for the sake of the committee who was not, those members who weren't able to attend the meeting last Wednesday, and Alderwoman Cruzen joined me in that meeting, but the idea is that we would have a multi-step process to review this. There would be 3 pieces to the puzzle. One piece would be the financial or the economic piece. One piece would be architectural and design and aesthetics, and the other one would be urban planning. So the idea is that in order to go ahead and receive any incentives, they would have to, hit minimum, scores in each of those 3 areas. I'm gonna hit you a little blind here. I send you these cryptic emails at odd hours, and I know when I don't want to call you up in the middle of the night. But I sent you an email the other day. I really think that this needs to be almost like a 2-pronged process. That I applaud and think that Jonathan's really on the right path by going ahead. Some of the financial analysis piece of this is kind of mind-numbing, and it's going to create, for a lot of people, just their eyes will roll up and they won't be able to go through that. But I think it's reassuring to all of us to think that he's out trying to engage the academic community and peer groups to review his work. But there is a political aspect to all this, and I think that's where we come in, and I think at some point we have to kind of marry the ideal situation with, the political realities of what our respective electorates are expecting. And so therefore, I think that, it would probably be appropriate for us to probably begin, as we begin moving down the line, or perhaps our committee can begin having some public hearings or some part of city government engage the public to provide some opportunity, and that, as we move forward, I think these things are going to be, the way we do this will be somewhat of a fluid thing, and should be fluid depending upon how the economy is doing and how different parts of our city are doing and so forth. So I actually think that, when we develop a policy, it should be almost a written policy that should be adopted by the board in a form of a resolution at some point. And that's kind of my thinking, and I'm really haven't discussed it with anybody else other than, the email I shot you the other evening. But I just think that we shouldn't get too far, I don't think SLDC should get too far down the line without, the Board of Aldermen actually being engaged and perhaps having some public hearings in some way, shape, or form on this. Alderman Boyd was with us just a minute ago, and I haven't sat down and really discussed this with him, but he's chairman of our Neighborhood Development Committee, which also deals with incentives, and so I think it's only appropriate that we're all on the same page. But I think it's a little hard to get too far down the path until we get in, frankly, I think this is great work, but the strategic plan is, having incentives that should be purposeful and, kind of targeted to something. And I don't know what I'm asking for from you, but I just wanted to share that with you now as we begin,
We're committed to
publicly airing this process.
Right, we're committed to have that conversation, dialogue, and with you, the board, and with the public, and that we will be thoughtful in that process. We won't codify or come to any conclusions until we have had discussions with you all.
So the way I view this is you have a tool which controls, money is a limited resource. So we go ahead and we have a relatively scarce resource, and rather than kind of, throwing it in every direction, the idea would be is that we can kind of focus and concentrate it with some purposefulness, and that would be something that would be tied to a strategic plan. So that's the role of the strategic plan. Frankly, it should be tied to a change in taxing policy too, but that's going to be a lot harder to do. But could you give us an update on the strategic plan and when you anticipate starting on that, and how that's going to?
We're at the draft stage of trying to put together the RFP. We're also trying to find additional funding so that we can. My thought is that the cost of this is a significant amount, and so once we get to the final, we'll take it to the SLDC board, and then we'll be issuing sometime later, and I would say probably in the month of July.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to go through and give everybody a chance. Is it something that should happen before that, or are you willing to? Okay. And, before I go through the committee, I just happen to look over my shoulder and I see the alderman from the 22nd behind me, and I'm going to go ahead and go completely out of whack, and instead of recognizing committee members, I'm going to recognize a fellow chair who runs the development committee, or neighborhood development, Mr. Alderman Boyd. Do you have any questions for Executive Director?
Not at this time, but I do want to thank you for allowing me. I do want to compliment Otis for all the tireless hard work he did on the initiative project. Say thank you so much for bringing it.
Thank you.
Alderman Bosley, do you have any questions about this subject matter? Alderman Kennedy?
No question.
Alderwoman Cruzen? Alderman Moore's not here. Alderwoman Davis?
Oh, I just wanted to make a suggestion as you are preparing this RFP for how we're going to look at the incentives and the scoring, that we give consideration to, and I'm sure that the planning division can help you figure this out, but we give additional points for development projects in certain areas of the city. We tend to have areas of the city neglected because they're not, jazzy or whatever, but they need development. And so those who are willing to invest money and make projects happen there should get more points on their.
I think what we will present to you, we'll talk about that scorecard, how we will take those variables into consideration. So we are, based on what we found in the incentive study, we are trying to develop a scorecard. And what Alderman Rhodey referred to as the three components of that scorecard, we'll go into more detail about.
Okay.
Alderman French, I think, is in the other meeting along with Alderman Carter. Alderman Cotard, do you have any?
No question.
Alderwoman Spencer?
Nope.
Alderwoman Green?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of quick questions. There were a few of us who couldn't make it last Wednesday afternoon to that where Sarah Coffin presented. Personally, I didn't know about it until I got to this committee meeting in the morning.
Right.
Is there a possibility of either a second?
What I mentioned about inviting the alderman, establishing maybe 2 or 3 dates that alderman can attend, that is the purpose, to essentially go through that same presentation. It was actually a presentation by our staff. Sarah was gracious enough to host it for us, but it was done by our staff, John Ferry, Brian Robinson, and Michael.
Is there a reason for doing it in small groups rather than presenting in front of the committee where the public can be available to also see this?
Well, I wanted to be more of a working, and I didn't want to really get a quorum, but I just wanted to be able to have the open discussion, sort of like we did with NGA, so everybody can just basically give your down and dirty opinion. But we will host the public as well. So this is not to include the public, but
Okay.
we will.
And then one final question. In the partners that you've had at the table or that you've reached out to get their feedback on this, has the school district been involved at all?
Not yet.
Okay. I would strongly encourage them to have a seat at the table. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, we'll let our Director of Development get back to the job of finding new businesses for the city. And at this point, we'll take up Board Bill number 11, which is sponsored by Alderman Kotar, and it concerns some rezoning in his ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Board Bill 11 is a rezoning bill to rezone a number of parcels south of the ballpark from industrial to central business districts, so going from J to I. This process sort of started prior to me. I know Phyllis Young, my predecessor, had looked at this and worked with the zoning commissioner to identify these parcels that, frankly, based on development, this really is no longer an industrial area. We wanted to put some more restrictions in place and really make it more part of downtown. So this was undertaken and then sort of got shelved, and here we are. We're back and we're ready to rezone these parcels. You'll see in the board bill there's an attachment, Exhibit B, which shows all the parcels that we're talking about and their current uses and whether or not it's a conforming or non-conforming use under J, which we're proposing to change the zoning to. The vast majority of these parcels are parking. It's a lot of surface parking, which is still permitted use under J. The only parcel, or the only non-conforming use out of all these parcels would be at Lord Distributing, simply their outside storage. They would need they're grandfathered in, but any future tenant of that building, Lord Distributing, is kind of on, I want to say that's 8th Street. It's over by Four Hands Brewery. So they would simply, if they wanted a future tenant that wanted to do outside storage, would need a conditional use permit, but that is the only non-conforming use in this whole rezoning. Relatively non-controversial, cleaning up a lot of zoning. There's actually still, you'll notice in here as well, some two-family units, Zone B, that are essentially downtown, that just never got rezoned into J, Central Business District. If you need further information, and Mary Hart Burton is here. She can provide more detail if you all think it's necessary. Otherwise, I'm happy to entertain questions and ask for a favorable recommendation on Board Bill 11.
Alderman Bosley, any questions?
It's in his ward, I support it.
Alderman Kennedy?
No question.
Alderwoman Cruzen?
No questions.
Alderwoman Davis?
No questions.
Alderwoman Spencer?
Forgive me, Alderman Coder, this is the bill, we looked at this last session, is that right?
I
Or
don't
something
believe so, no.
Okay.
We may have,
So you were
we
saying.
rezoned something, I rezoned a property, Soulard, last session for Lafayette School, but no, this is a separate rezone.
But when you said we shelved it, it's not because we've
It
seen it
never came in front of the
before.
committee.
Okay.
It was just simply discussed amongst the zoning commissioner and her staff.
I see, okay. I have no further questions at this time.
Alderwoman Green? All right. Hearing no other questions, the chair will entertain a motion that we pass out Board Bill number 11 with the due pass recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We do have a, but we don't, we have a quorum still, so I see. Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Bosley?
Aye.
Alderman Kennedy?
Aye.
Alderman Conway? Alderman Cruzen? Alderman Moore? Alderman Davis? Alderman French? Alderman Carter? Alderman Coker?
Aye.
Alderman Spencer?
Aye.
Alderman Green? Chairman Rowland?
Aye.
8 ayes, votes to pass.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Okay. Then we have Board Bill number 35. Alderman Davis. We're at the Alderman Davis's request, then we're going to hear Board Bill number 61 first. Alderwoman Hubbard is not with us presently, but we will hear this for the purpose of hearing it today, for the public hearing. But we're going to hold this in committee pending, I believe Alderwoman Hubbard had a family medical, I don't know if it was an emergency or an issue, but she has a child that has a health issue that came up today, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Board Bill number 61 represents 1501 Washington. The developer is 1501 Washington, St. Louis LLC. This is a out-of-town developer from Milwaukee, has experience, has developed and managed hotels in the past. One most especially recognized is the Iron Horse Hotel in downtown Milwaukee. The property at 1501 was the former International Shoe Company building, and most of us know that we had formerly used that building for a charter school, but it's currently vacant now. So the project is within 1501 to 09 Washington, and it is eligible for 15 years of tax abatement. The project in its entirety will have 142 rooms, street-level food and beverage, as well as a rooftop restaurant, bar, pool, and workout facility. The hotel will be a full-service boutique hotel with a social club on the rooftop, approximately 9,500 square feet. The total cost of the project is about $40 million. So the benefits to the city will include generating approximately 125 new jobs. It'll be close proximity to the City Museum and the Washington Avenue Entertainment District, as well as adding another supply for the boutique hotel industry for convention and tourism. The incentives on this project are the federal historic tax credits, state historic tax credits, 1% SID, 1% TDD, and sales tax rebate. This board bill is considered in a blighting study and redevelopment plan for this address, and it was done a number of years ago, and we find that we're authorizing 15 years of real estate tax abatement. Alderwoman Hubbard unfortunately couldn't be here today, but I do understand that there are some other concerns on the bill, and I would like to ask that the chairman recognizes that and understands that we should not take a vote today. But the bill has been explained and heard.
I want to recognize we have some very nice financials in front of us. What I thought was we could go, are there anybody signed up to testify in favor of the bill or?
Against?
No.
No,
Okay. So we can now say that that bill was heard today. I would expect that all of us might have some additional questions when Alderwoman Hubbard is before us, but at least we've gone ahead and heard that. Oh, is that for this bill? Oh, we have the counselor for the bill, David Richardson, is here. David, did you want to speak on this bill, or I
Just
presume
happy
we're
to answer
gonna
any
go-
questions.
Okay, I will recognize you when we take it up in earnest. Okay, the next bill, Alderwoman, did you want to take up Board Bill number 35 then?
Yes, please. So Board Bill 35 has a committee substitute. Board Bill 35 has a committee substitute that we need to handle first, please.
Chair will entertain- the committee substitute should be in the pile of bills.
It's on your
before you.
desk.
The chair will entertain a motion that we take up committee substitute.
So moved.
Been moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there a request for previous roll?
Previous roll.
Request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider committee substitute 35 for Board Bill 35 before us. Proceed on.
Thank you very much. The bill allows for 10 years tax abatement and an additional 5 years at 50% if the parking lot is developed with 3-story structure or larger. The addresses involved for this parking facility is 1600 Washington and 1742 Washington. And for reference, we're dealing with the old CPI building and the adjoining parking lots. And the project has been named the Monogram Building. The additional 5 years was added at the request of SLDC to incentivize development of the parking lot. As you know, parking is a premium, and if there's any way we can make it happen, we try to. And we are also grateful because we know that no matter what a structure is used for, we will need parking in the future. The cost of the project is about $51 million. There will be 112 single-bedroom units, 14 per floor, with about 1,000 square feet of space in each unit. There will be 32 two-bedroom units, 4 per floor, with about 1,400 square feet in each unit. There will be 24 studio units, 3 per floor, with about 800 square feet in each unit. That's the largest studio I know of with 800 square feet. That's very good. The total number of residential units will be 168 units and 200 parking spaces. Now, the first floor will have an early child care center and a leasing office there. And the floors above the first floor will be used for residential housing. The roof will have a pool, cabana, and lounge. Adjoining the building will be a playground, dog park, and on-site parking. Spectrum Station, the early child care center, will hire about 40 full-time employees and pay $35,000 to $55,000 annually. Additionally, Spectrum Station will hire 10 part-time employees and pay $15 per hour. Lincoln Property Company will hire 5 employees to manage and maintain the property, and they will each be paid $30,000 to $65,000 annually. The rents will range from $900 to $1,450, which includes parking. We will be using state and federal tax credits, and at this moment, no other development incentives have been provided and/or asked for. For me, I would like to ask that the attorney representing the project, David Sweeney, gives us some more fine details on this project.
Sure, thank you. And also with me is Michael Knight. He's the developer on this project. They also are doing a project over in Kansas City, the Commerce Tower. Many of you may be familiar with that. That's a $139 million project. This is their first entry into St. Louis. The reason you'll see that there's 2 alderwomen sponsoring the bill, the division between the parking lot and the building, of course, is exactly down the board boundaries. So we work with 2 alderwomen on this, fortunately. So Alderwoman Davis did an excellent job explaining it. I'll let Michael give a little bit more finite details, and if we have any questions, we'd be happy to take those on.
Sure. And again, more than happy to answer any questions. My name is Michael Knight. I reside in Kansas City, and this is our first project here. The project, we're trying to, a couple things that kind of work from the bottom up. The Early Childhood Learning Center, we think is a really big amenity, not just for our building, but the entire neighborhood. It should serve about 200 to 215 children on-site, secure playground facilities. This is a proven operator that we have in one of our Kansas City buildings. This will be their 6th location. The incomes of those employees was right. The director will actually make a little more than that. That salary is more in the 60-plus income range. But that'll serve about 215 kids, and we're really thinking that that'll change kind of the pattern of the double commuters in the morning who work downtown and have to, double commute to a different suburb to drop off their children. My son actually goes to one of the current facilities, and it's really an educational program. It's curriculum-based, it's enrollment-based, so they're expected to be there. They do a great job. It's based on the STEM program, but adding in the arts, so they call it STEAM. The building will be LEED, Silver, or Gold certified. Our score currently based on our MEP design is like a 43 or 53, 54. So we're trying to push to gold. All of our buildings are LEED certified. Most of our construction is rehab or historic rehab, redevelopment. The jobs I think you covered. We're trying to think a little more globally about the living experience, dog parks, bike storage facilities, energy efficiency, high efficiency HVAC systems, so the actual cost to the resident is lowered, including the parking, the secured parking into the rent so that they're not being nickel and dimed. And we're underwriting rents that are current market conditions, not, aspirational goals for the future. So, a very conservative set of projections. And also we're trying to break that threshold of what seems to be that $1,000 plus mark in that Washington Avenue neighborhood. So we're able to deliver units that we think are going to be more in the $800-900 range on the smaller units, which we think might help the diversity of that corridor. If there's any questions I could answer for you, more than happy to do that. Just real quick, I'll run through timing with you. We are through MEP design, we are through awarding of the subcontractors, and we will be in for a permit set probably in the next 30 to 45 days, and we'll turn construction on this project sometime in September, October, and we've owned the building since January 21st. We do have a preliminary plan for the east parking lot. We've been approached by a couple of creditworthy national tenants that would have a retail storefront. We're very downtown walkable. I mean, everything we do is urban core, so we're not building any boxes with parking around it. This would be a very well-designed retail space, pedestrian-friendly, with parking structure, other retail, and other residential units probably on top of that to increase the density. So yeah, it would be respectful and obviously complementary to the neighborhood, but we don't have a lease in hand and we don't have an LOI, so that idea for the east side is still very preliminary. Peric Construction is our general contractor here in town, and we've already met with all of our contractors, and our MBWBE goals and so on are already stipulated in our contract conditions, and obviously we hope to beat those goals, and that is the plan.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Michael.
Michael, thank you, Michael. I had a couple the way we're going to do this, everyone, is we'll ask questions of Michael, and then we'll pull Jonathan up to walk us through the numbers. Just so I understand this, I'm looking at a sketch in your handout here that was provided us. The three-story lot that the alderwoman from the 19th had mentioned, is that to the west of
the east lot?
So this is the east?
No, that's the west lot. Washington Avenue is the front of the building. The east lot's a larger lot towards downtown, which would be to your left. Is that what you're looking at?
It'd be two, I mean, if that...
The bigger lot is to the east, the smaller lot is directly to the west, and Washington Ave is the front facade of the building, so I believe...
Is this on the south side of Washington or the north side of Washington?
South side.
It's on the south side of Washington, so I
So
should be...
to your left is the large east lot,
Okay.
if you're holding the paper.
So if that's, so this would be to the east. So that's the east lot is to the, that's where the three-story...
Well, it would actually...
No. That's proposed for the tax abatement to go the additional.
There's no plan to build that right now.
SLDC came back with a counter, and that's what's in the committee stuff, that if there is a three-story or larger facility built there on that surface lot, would be an additional 5 years at 50%.
Right.
Okay.
There's no plan in place to start that now. We don't have a tenant, which would be the linchpin to that being a reality.
Okay, and then to the west of that, then is there?
Very small lot.
It's a very small.
That's our
lot.
commercial.
Used for faculty and for a playground for
Okay.
the school.
Drop off, parents pick up, drop off, faculty parking, and then the dedicated secure playground for the actual early childhood learning center.
So just so I understand the sequence of this, then, you're before us today, you're gonna start trying to work on this project, and then as you're doing that, you'll be looking for a tenant for the first floor of a 3-story building?
That's the minimum that.
I'm not, I wasn't originally trying to build a building. I was approached by retail tenants that said, would you build us this place? So I put together a proposal, and I think SLDC was just trying to be proactive and incentivize that if it came to reality, but again, that
Okay,
was.
but, so you'll get at least 10-year tax abatement, and you'll
Exactly.
get 15 if that project comes to fruition.
Correct, but
The last 5 to 15%.
I actually think they're doing their job when they do that,
Yes.
because I think you're gonna have to incentivize somebody to do that, and I think it would be a far superior project with that, so.
absolutely.
Let me, ask you, you're involved, I'm sorry, I'm very parochial, I don't get around very much. In Kansas City, you have a large project up there that, and you said it was, it sounded like a signature project for Kansas City?
Yeah, Kansas City, our project there is the former Commerce Tower, which is the Commerce Bank World Headquarters building from 1964 up until
Oh, okay, I remember that
1986.
building.
It's a 31-story, 500,000 plus square foot building that is LEED Silver certified. It's the first rehab building ever to participate in HUD's new Green Initiative program. It's 355 market rate apartments, 100,000 square feet of education space, Park University. We have an early childhood learning center component there. We're working on a charter school component as well. Rooftop amenities, bike storage, electric car charging stations, fitness centers, all those kinds of things as well. But it's also the first public transit-oriented project in Kansas City, and was actually launched, it's been under construction for 8 months, but launched about 2 weeks ago as part of Kansas City's new streetcar project, and the project has its own dedicated streetcar stop.
So with that project, when, I presume you received state and federal?
That is a
historic
historic National Register project as well.
From a standpoint of local incentives up there, what were you provided?
That project is a 10-year tax abatement and a TIF deal on the back portion of that as well. On this project, we're strictly asking for a 10-year abatement, no special sales tax provisions or any of that kind of, just the property tax.
You
abatement.
had a TIF for part of that then?
A portion of it,
You-
correct. A very
sales-
small portion of reimbursables towards life safety and code modification, things that had been done since the building was sold.
Okay, thank you. We'll go through the committee to ask questions, and then we'll ask our financial person to come up.
Just if you want a breakdown of this project, we've got just over 29 million in debt. We've got about a little over $16 million in historic tax
You know,
credit.
if it's all right,
equity.
we're gonna have our finance guy do that.
Well, yeah, but
He has
that's
a
not
sheet that-
accurate, so I'd like to just.
Oh,
update
it's
it.
not accurate? You
And then
think?
we've got a little over $5 million in owner equity for a total project cost of $51 million. I believe the report I saw said 49. And one of the reasons that is because the only way to make these schools possible is they can't afford to take care of that kind of investment expense. I mean, this is a personally guaranteed lease for the next 10 years with a 10-year renewal. But very simply, schools don't operate with revenues on day one. They need students. And the only way to get that is to allow them a ramp up of stabilization so that they can be successful. Obviously, the long-term success of there ensures the long-term success of the project in the neighborhood. So what we've done is we build out the $2 million space that is to support the school, and then we set up a kind of a ramp up that they don't start paying rent until 2 years down the road or until they hit a 75% occupancy of student enrollment. And just to give you an example of that, on their Kansas City location, before they even went public on 215 students, we had 75 pre-enrollments at that location. And we think that'll be the same thing here. But that's how you can do those kinds of things, is bringing them into a larger envelope of a bigger project. I just wanted to clarify
That's
that.
your preschool then, right?
Yes.
Correct.
All the way to private kindergarten.
Okay, and so you're saying that the sources and uses before us is inaccurate?
Well, it's
Just
just slightly. We're $51 million now based on real costs, real numbers, based on actual construction contracts. They can elaborate on that, but I just wanted to point out We've
Okay.
got about $5 million in developer equity for a project that's about $51 million in change.
Okay. Alderman Bosley, any questions of our
Yeah,
developer?
I have a question, and I think it's good that they're doing this kind of investment, but were the people who own property within 100 yards of here made aware of this? Because when this goes in, it's gonna raise their property values as well.
Mhm.
Were they made aware? Were there any public hearings?
Sure,
Where
there-
people
public
who
notice.
lived anywhere around that were made aware that this was coming?
Yeah, we've met
And
with
I'm not
neighbors.
saying it's not good.
Sure, yeah,
But
we-
I think you need to make people aware of it because it's gonna increase their property values as well.
Yeah, we went to the downtown neighborhood. I met with Craig Heller at the Downtown Development Council. I met with our
Downtown
partnership, sorry.
We publicly noticed up the
And then
needs.
we met with all the surrounding buildings, which, the Eli Walker building, the commercial tenants, some of the residential tenants, the condo building across the street from us. I mean, we've been talking to our neighbors. This,
And everybody is in league with this?
Well, I mean, anything on Washington Avenue is gonna increase value as we do continue to do projects. I mean, it's a nice problem to have. I mean, honestly.
yeah, everybody seemed to be,
Faces Washington Avenue.
Let me,
Sure.
chime in on that, please. One of the things that most people are very excited about is we have a number of vacant buildings there. So they're taking one of the larger ones and making something out of it, bringing life to it with residents, preschool, including infants, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, which is the residents who have bought lofts or renting apartments. We've also spoke to them about it, and also Downtown Partnership is very much aware of it. And hopefully, as we continue in the next 6 months or so, we'll see 2 other buildings in that immediate area being developed as well. It's really exciting.
Okay. Were there any meetings called for the people in the immediate vicinity so that they may have some input in this? Because after it happens, they're gonna come down here to the Board of Aldermen if anybody's unhappy.
Well, one of the things that I pride myself on is that those established communities, they do have very active neighborhood associations that meet monthly, and we have made sure that they are aware of everything that is going on. And aside from that, even before he was actually introduced to them, I met with the executive director of the Neighborhood Association and Craig Heller and explained the project and my desires and understanding of the project.
It's in your ward, I don't have a problem with
That's
it, but
okay.
you know how people are.
Yes, I do.
Once it happens, they will come down here protesting and raising all kind of cash.
That's true.
Yeah?
That is true. Thank you.
And I'm gonna refer them to you if they call me.
You know, I'm used to it now. I'm used to it, so send them my way.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Alderman Kennedy, any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Alderwoman Cruzen.
I had the chance to see this project at the Planning Commission, and I just want to point out a couple things. One is that this is a long vacant building. I don't know if you said how long or not, I don't recall.
CPI's been, they filed for bankruptcy some time ago, and the building has been vacant for
At least 5.
probably 5 to 7 years. I mean, and it's completely vacant, and it's a large building that's made for a very specific use, so just trying to move an office tenant in there doesn't really work.
Previously owned by a speculator. That was-
One of the things I was going to point out is how creative I think this project is, because this is a big old square block of a building that used to be used for industrial. And so it's pretty hard to put apartments in there because you don't have as many windows as you'd like. And so they've actually taken the center of this building and made it storage for the apartments, so a place to put your bike and a place to put your suitcase and whatever other junk you have that doesn't fit into your apartment, which I think is really a creative aspect to this particular project, to be able to kind of maximize the apartments and provide something that's probably not available in other products in that area. So I just want to compliment you on the reuse here of this, big square
It's a big square.
hunk of a building. So anyway, that's all. It was a
Yeah,
comment,
no,
not a
that's
question.
a good point. We put the storage on each floor, so it's convenient. You can just walk out. The other thing we did with that center section is as you come off the elevator at each section, there's an actual sitting breakout area where people can meet, they can have interaction. We have charging stations, so it's like a business lounge on each floor. So the center section, instead of just being dead space, is now storage and community kind of interaction space, which if you give people a space to interact, weird things happen. Sometimes they have conversations, and those can kind of be a catalyst.
So no questions. I think it's a nice project.
Alderman Coder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This looks like a great project. Looking at the design here, the one thing that, and maybe this bill's already been passed, but is there a complimentary bill in streets to vacate this section of 17th Street? It looks like you're taking over the street.
There is, and that's been introduced. And also with that, we've been working with the streets department and the traffic commissioner to make 16th Street, which is on the other side of the parking lot, go from a one-way to a two-way.
Okay.
And we've done the engineering plans. We're getting all of that approved as well, which will make easier access not only for that parking lot, but also for the folks at Eli Walker that now have to go one directional. So that 17th Street was just a one-way.
Yeah.
It's a pretty small street. So yeah, and we're doing that obviously to secure, to bring the whole parking lot all the way, but also to have ADA parking right there, right next to the building.
Gotcha. So you'll basically using I'm looking at the design here, it looks like you'll use part of 17th Street for that ADA parking.
Correct, right, that's exactly right. And we've gone through the process with the streets division where you have to go through all the utilities, you go through all the steps with Jennifer Large-Jones, as you all are familiar with the vacation process there, and that's all been going on.
And immediately to the north, does 17th Street go through? Once you get to Wash Ave, does it dead end or does it go through there? I mean, are we going to be, what I'm getting at is there's going to be some concern, having seen some of these bills lately, with closing the grid, closing streets down. I'm wondering, is 17th Street, does it dead end somewhere nearby?
Sure, the next block over.
The next block.
And I mean, if you're looking at St. Charles Street, which most people think is an alley, I mean,
Yeah.
those are pretty small streets. This went before planning and zoning, they approved it.
So the improvement is
So, I mean, yes, so that close that, but then the improvement will be directional
On 16th, okay.
Right, so we improved the
There's only
direction.
one way going.
We corrected two-way traffic on 16th, and we, at our cost, are obviously fixing the ADA issues on 16th there at the curb and gutter as well. It's important to point out on 17th Street, there is no city utility or infrastructure or drainage or any of that kind of stuff that runs down that either.
Okay, thank you very much. This looks like a great project.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Spencer. Oh, lost her. Alderwoman Green.
Quick clarification. One thing says it's a child care facility, and then the thing from SLDC says charter school.
It's an early child.
Charter school.
It's not a charter.
Okay.
It's an early childhood learning center.
Okay.
I might have confused myself on that just because I don't like to say it's a daycare because it's
Right.
so much more than that.
I agree.
We have a license. There's a teacher in each room with like a paraprofessional, and so daycare doesn't do
Right.
it justice.
I come out of that industry, so I'm very familiar with it. Do you know if they'll be accepting child care subsidy?
I don't know that.
Okay,
Don't
I
know
can
that.
look that up. Thank you.
Okay, that's all of the committee members for speaking to the developer. Jonathan, could you come up and just walk us through your financials then and perhaps give us
Just as Jonathan's coming up, as Otis mentioned, this is a work in progress. And so Jonathan has put together this project to show you sort of the format we're anticipating. And clearly the number is, not maybe the exact number that they have today. And so there are a number of things that the numbers may not be totally up to date, but this is the kind of format we anticipate doing as we get input from everybody, obviously this will be changing, but it gives you a sense of where we're going with this.
Thank you, Chairman. So yeah, just as far as the sources and uses go, the difference there, I just copied this directly from what was.
Walk us right through your.
Yeah, we will. I just wanted to just
come
comment on
first page here.
the difference. I guess it's the project cost must have changed since what I was originally given, and I didn't get any sort of updated numbers. So just starting sort of the middle of the page, what this is very similar to, I guess, what has been given and reported previously in the past. The difference is really just that the value of the tax abatement is done by taking the net present value over a period of years based on the income approach as opposed to the cost approach, which was used before. The reason for using the income approach to assess the property is the recommendation of the assessor's office for income generating properties. But all it does is it takes the value of the property, multiplies it by the tax rate, and sums it up. Those values are over the course of the, I guess in this case it would be 10-year value. So that would be the value of the tax abatement, and the value of the nominal and present value, and then the amount of revenue collected during the project as well. Again, the second page.
So
yep.
let me make sure I understand the first page here. So the no or minimal incentive value. So that is, what is that, $5,702,000? What does that represent?
5.7 million.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the nominal value. So that's basically just what the dollars are in sort of in future value.
As it improved, or is it as it is now?
Improved. That's the
That's
value.
with the improvement.
with the
So then the
improvements.
next column is the present value then?
Basically correct. Yeah, because it has a fairly high tax base on it for whatever reason.
So the 2.2 million, does that?
So that's again what you're looking at there is.
Is that the delta, or is that the?
No, that is the base. That's essentially what is expected to be generated over the 10-year period in nominal dollars. So you're not taking any sort of discounting on that. It's just literally taking the sum of all the tax payments.
Is it the 5.7 million, or is it 2.2?
2.2 is the base. 5.7 is what's the projected value of the incentive. So if you add those two numbers together, you would get what the total tax is, what the total tax value would be without the abatement over 10 years. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So first of all, let's take a step back. Do we all understand what I'm talking about when I say nominal value?
Nominal is not discounted, right?
Right, not discounted. So it's literally if you just take the tax payments and sum them all up over 10 years.
Okay, but is that with the improvements or without the improvements?
So the far right column is without improvements.
Is that what they're going to pay over 10 years or 15 years, which is it?
It's over 10.
So this is a 10-year.
Mhm.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
We need all the help we can get. So
So
that's,
what they'll pay over 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
2.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So they're gonna pay that regardless.
Correct.
If it were not abated, they would be paying 5.7 million over 10 years?
So 5.7 is the value of the incentive. So they would be paying the value of the incentive plus the base. So you'd have to add those two columns together.
If it were not abated, they would be paying
About 7.9.
something like that, $8 million, let's round it off, $8 million if
Yep.
it were not abated.
Right.
So the dollar value over 10 years, I don't know if this assumes any increase in assessed value or not, is 5.7 million is the dollar value of the incentive to them.
Yeah, it doesn't. It assumes it assumes a 1% annual growth rate, I believe, in the value of the property.
Okay, so that's the dollar value
Mm-hmm.
of what they won't have to pay
Mm-hmm.
because they're gonna get the 10 years of abatement,
Correct.
right? Okay. And the present value of that over 10 years at some rate
Mm-hmm.
is $3.5 million.
Correct.
Okay. are you recommending this? I mean, is there a conclusion to this?
Yes, there is. I am recommending the incentive for the 10 years. It basically, it is, I have to kind of, it's at the second to last page, that's the project economic financial scorecard, which I'm going to kind of explain how that works.
Bury the lead, as they would say in
Well,
the newspaper business.
Yeah, what I'd like to do is just us walk through to kind of understand what's going on until we get this kind of standardized a little bit, and then we can, so does everybody understand the first page? I think I finally understand the first page. So the present value of the incentives is 3.5 million roughly. Let's flip to this, well, the second page is blank. Let's flip to the third page, which is, starts with the sources and uses up at the top.
Yep, the sources and uses, again, this is just copied directly from what I was originally given from the developer's attorney. So it just, obviously, it's been changed. So it sounds like the owner's equity is a little bit higher and the total project cost is a little bit higher. I would have to defer to them to see if anything else has changed.
So if we were to look at this real kind of rush, get us through here, we have 8 million of federal and 8 million of state, and then if we wanted to, we could go ahead and throw another 3.5 million of local, but that's obviously kind of an off statement kind of exchange that's occurring there. Are there any questions about the sources and uses page? Okay. Now we go through, and the next one is, I'm sure I'm gonna get a little lost on here, so walk us through here real quick.
So the market valuation analysis, again, this is something that is not new to the process. This is something that has been done since Barb Geisman was here. The process is essentially to try and take the estimated value of the property and compare that to what the cost of the project is to try and see what the gap would be. So in this case, again, we've got a total cost that would be a little bit higher. It would be the 51 million, and the developer fee, I guess, would be higher as well. But for the sake of argument, let's just use the numbers that we have in front of us. It doesn't seem like the numbers are going to change that drastically. So you would take the total project cost, subtract off the developer fee and the tax credits that are received. There's no brownfield or new market tax credits and nothing other. And then you would add back on the max developer fee. Now the max developer fee is derived from a formula that was copied from the Missouri Housing Development Corporation or Commission. And they've actually since amended their formula, and I'm ultimately going to recommend that we amend ours as well, but for now we're still using the same formula, and that formula is you take the total project cost minus acquisition and minus the developer fee and multiply that by 15%, and then you take the acquisition cost and you multiply that by 4%, and you add those two figures together, and that gives you the $5.9 million figure. So what that number represents essentially is their sort of profit cap, and is what we would allow in terms of the incentive. So when you add all that together, their project cost with profit built in is $34.4 million. The market value of the space is calculated, again, using the income approach. We take the stabilized income, which maybe my understanding of stabilized may be slightly off given what was described earlier about the way the schools work, but the idea is what the income is going to be generated whenever you've reached sort of like stable occupancy. And then the cap rates come from the Real Estate Research Corporation. They've got values for the St. Louis metro area, so I use those directly. And it's a weighted cap rate, so you take the total net income divided by that weighted cap rate, and it gives you this market value of $28.2 million. When you subtract that $28.2 million from the $34.4 million, you get what we call the max incentive allowable, which is almost $6.2 million. Then below that, there's the project cost analysis. So the other sort of rule that was originally adopted was that the incentive would be capped by the lesser of whatever the max incentive allowable was, or 15% of the project cost. So in this case, 15% of the project cost would be $7.3 million based on a $49 million project cost. So then that shows the lesser of those two numbers is the nearly 6.2 million. The incentive amount comes from the first page, that $3.5 million in net present value. And the reason we use the net present value instead of the nominal ultimately is because if the developer has to, it doesn't show up on their sources and uses, but if they were to try and essentially monetize that revenue stream, that's essentially what they would have to throw into the project, given a 6% discount rate. So because that number is less than the incentive amount allowed, it says that the incentive request is acceptable. The boxes to the right, there's just two different ways of calculating the market value, and to give the developer the benefit of the doubt, I always use the lower of the two numbers. And the top box is generally, I think, going to be more accurate anyway, because the bottom box just uses the debt coverage cap rate calculation, which if anyone wants me to get into that, I can, but otherwise I won't. Any questions on that portion? Does that make sense?
I have one question. Rather than me trying to understand your methodology here, I mean, I'd like to meet with you sometime and actually talk through it. I don't want to torture everyone else.
Yeah, this is.
Don't want to torture
This is tough
everybody
stuff to
else.
go through, I know, in a group setting like this. Okay, go ahead and take us to the bottom part then, the scorecard.
So the bottom part is really the only part of this whole process that I have sort of added, I guess. Everything else is a part of the evaluation that has been done in the past. So what this is essentially is a way of coming up with a score to evaluate the cost benefit of the project. If you will take a look at the total score line, and I'll explain why there's two sets of scores here, but if you look at the total score line, that is out of 40 possible points. What we've, and it's part of what Alderman Rhodey was talking about earlier with this overall scorecard we want to develop. There'll be two other portions, and those will each have 30 points each, so there'll be 100 points possible, but my portion's just out of 40. So what we've kind of initially set sort of as the bar to pass would be you need 24 points in order for it to be a project that is viable to the city. And I need to explain how this process works, what these sort of value score and what tax revenue score means. And if you want to read later, all the notes below try to explain what those terms mean. But essentially, what the value score looks at is what the property generates in terms of sales, earnings, payroll, and property taxes per square foot relative to what sort of the average is for the neighborhood.
Let me interrupt because Alderman Davis was sort of discussing that earlier, where we should give extra incentive for neighborhoods that really need projects. And so that would be where we build that in, because in certain neighborhoods, the existing is much lower than would it be in Downtown West. Downtown West would have one of the highest ones. So that's the opportunity to build in what Alderman Davis was talking about.
Right. So everything is done here on it's looked at as the revenue generated per square foot of land, not per square foot of building. And again, it's compared to how much revenue is being generated per square foot of land for the same land use type. So in this case, it's specialty mixed use, so I compared it to other specialty mixed use properties in Downtown West. So with that said, the value score is out of 18 possible points. And you can look at these numbers below where you see property-based revenue, neighborhood target, sustainable target, and so on. The sustainable target for the entire site is calculated by taking that value per square foot and multiplying it by the total number of square feet of land for the entire site. And that's how you get that 5.6 million number. I won't talk, I'll skip over the sustainable target for the moment. So then that lower number, that property economic value, that is what this project would generate over 20 years just to the city. So I exclude revenue to the school district and MSD and everything like that. It's just to the city. That's what and it's discounted at 5%. That's what this project would generate, and you compare that to sort of like what the sustainable target is. If you'll notice, the result is the score is less than 24, but that's because you're looking at the full site with that parking lot. And that's the reason why, so given that, we wanted to see what the project looked like when you just look at the building, and that's what this second set of numbers is. Same project, so you got the same property-based revenue, you've got the same property economic value. The difference between the property revenue is that on the left, I actually had a 15-year, I think I had a 15-year tax abatement. On the right, I moved it to the 10-year, because in initial discussions, 15-year was talked about by the developer's attorney. So you can see that relative to the neighborhood average or whatever, it scores a lot higher. It's a lot closer to what the average is for the neighborhood, and it's even really close to what the sustainable target is. The sustainable value or sustainable target is calculated by a very similar process to the neighborhood, but it takes into account how much revenue needs to be generated in order to support the unfunded infrastructure costs the city has. So in order to maintain all of our infrastructure citywide. So because it scored so well on the building by itself side, that's why my opinion is that this project is something that we need to approve. And that's also the reason why I recommended that we actually make the additional 5 years contingent on them developing that parking lot. Because if the parking lot is developed, then ultimately it's going to add additional value, which would bring up that score on the left. Is that clear at all?
Well, this is my second time through it. I'm a little better than I saw it the first time. I'm afraid that we'll be here the rest of the afternoon. I don't want to cut off committee members from understanding this at all. And so therefore would encourage you to visit with Jonathan. But the bottom line is you're recommending this based on this model today. And this is the last page, I guess, is the year-by-year cash flow on the.
Yeah, it's just a 10-year pro forma. And again, some of those numbers will be slightly off because the project cost is off.
And I just want to clarify, this sustainable value, this is what you and I have been talking about, that you're going to be back testing. And my concern, Jonathan, I think I told you this, is that, you know, the complexity of this, to be able to boil it down in something that more people can understand. I'm just a little worried about.
Ultimately, what this is going to translate into is, and it doesn't today yet, but it's ultimately going to translate into a grade, A, B, C, D, or F. And so if it's an A, B, or C, that means we're recommending it to pass. That's essentially what it comes down to.
I certainly don't want to cut anybody off, but this is kind of our first time as we're starting, and Jonathan's going to be back testing this against other projects to start seeing how they've done, and we're not even sure where we're going to end up at, but this is the very beginning of a process. So is there, why don't we, anybody have a specific question for Jonathan at this point? Okay. Okay, sure.
And Jonathan, thank you for this, because this is helpful. I mean, it's very complex, but I get we're sort of changing the way these projects are analyzed, and there's a lot more thought being put into them, which is a good thing. I guess my question would be, you know, like these guys are here today saying it's $51 million, not 49. Is this shared in advance with developers so they can say, hey, we disagree with X assumption or Y assumption, or, you know, is there a conversation before these meetings to sort of make sure that everybody's using the same assumptions?
Yeah, so in this case, we just, I literally came up with the format for how I was gonna report this yesterday.
Okay.
So the answer is no. I was just going off of what had been originally sort of sent. In other projects, we have sent the numbers ahead of time, so, but the ones that you're hearing today, I just came up with this last night. As far as the
Question, so we didn't see this until today, but, I mean, it's a good model, but the good news from the assumption point of view is our costs got higher and our revenues got less, so the case on this would actually increase.
Right.
So if I've got $2 million or more in costs and $300,000 less on net revenues, then it's getting worse, not better, so
Great, thank you, that's it.
worse for me, I should say.
When we have developers with their costs, is there a process, will we have a process in place to go back and do a cost verification, or I presume we do that with a number
Yeah,
of
so,
development projects already?
I probably need to defer to Dale on that. My understanding is that that was done historically. I guess it's still being done today. I would, like I said, defer to Dale.
I understand there's a big disconnect between our cost and actual building permits, because our building permits are always up.
Well, yeah, we can't count on that. No, we actually have the developer sign an affidavit at the end outlining all their exact costs before we implement the tax abatement. So
Okay.
there's a definite opportunity for that. And that affidavit is an exhibit in the redevelopment agreement that we signed with the redeveloper, so he knows up front what he has to
We
do.
never audit that or anything, do we?
Well, just so you know, in historic rehab deals like this one, that have historic tax credits, it's really easy because we have to go through a cost cert exercise anyway with DED post-construction. So
Okay.
they're already trued up.
Okay, yeah, I actually did that with my home before,
Exactly,
so.
and they're already
yeah.
validated by a third-party, accounting firm that does that
Okay.
for them. So usually, post-construction, and all these contracts are GMP contracts anyway, so, I mean, it's cost, and it's pretty easy.
Great. Thank you for sharing your experiences in Kansas City with us as well. Is there anybody signed up to speak on this then? Just the two of you? Okay. Before I entertain a motion, give everybody one last chance to ask any questions of the developer, of Dave, of Marlene. Oh, I should say Alderwoman. Seeing no questions, the chair will entertain a motion for a due pass recommendation.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Previous roles?
A request for previous roll. Hearing no objections, we'll consider this board bill as passed out of committee, make a due pass recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time today. Okay. What's our next, where am I? Now, who's that by? Alderwoman Davis is up there a lot today. Alderwoman Davis.
Yes, sir.
That's, I think we'll do our best to get out of here. Thank you.
I have another bill.
Shepherd Apartments.
Oh, okay, that's not, I don't have it in front of me. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Board Bill number 45, Alderman Bosley is a co-sponsor. The property actually fits in both of our wards, in 19 and 3rd Ward. This is an ordinance that's modifying the terms of the real estate tax abatement for the Shepherd Apartments redevelopment. This development has had some additional renovations done, and it is, in my opinion, worthy of the tax abatement that is being asked. And so we're authorizing 15 years instead of 10 years. And we're also looking at how they are financing the additional for the low-income housing tax credit program. And it's been implemented and financed appropriately. All those things that have been approved in the previous was reviewed for compliance, And so we're recommending the increase from 10 to 15. This is a senior living building on Martin Luther King, right at Garrison, I believe it is. And it's named in honor of Mackler Shepherd, who was one of our primary developers, African-American developers, in the city of St. Louis, along with, at that time, it was Pantheon. And they worked in partnership to develop some properties in North St. Louis, most especially housing development. And this building was long overdue for some renovations. And so I'm happy to see that that has happened.
Let me jump in.
Right.
Because we had a couple of bills last session that suggested we change tax abatement from 10 to 15 on projects that had been done for quite a few years. This is a different story. This one, the renovation just occurred a year or so ago, and when I went back into the file, all the alderman's recommendation, all the recommendations were for a 15-year tax abatement up front, because it was a low-income housing tax credit project. For reasons unknown to us and how it worked out, when the bill actually got introduced in the Board of Aldermen, it was for a 10-year tax abatement, even though everyone was anticipating a 15-year up front. So all this is really doing is correcting a mistake that was made, probably on our part, of ever sending a bill to the Board of Aldermen and to Alderwoman Davis for a 10-year when it was always intended to be a 15-year. So the rehabilitation just occurred a year or so ago, and the tax abatement has just really started on this, so it's really correcting a mistake that was made.
Thank you, that makes it a little easier for us to vote today. I didn't want to go ahead and start vote against my vice chair, so.
I can take it if it's necessary.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a point of clarification here? I guess so maybe I missed this. The tax abatement bill under ordinance 69450, it was the 10-year. When did that pass?
About 2 years ago.
2 years
and a half ago, yeah.
Thanks.
Alderman Bosley, do you have any questions? No. Alderman Kennedy?
No questions.
Alderwoman Cruzen? Alderman Coder, I presume you're satisfied. Alderwoman Green? With that, I'll entertain a motion that we pass out.
So moved. Second.
45.
Previous roll.
Request for previous roll, hearing no objection.
Who was the second? You were the second?
I second.
Alderman Kennedy, second.
Bosley made the motion.
I made the motion. Kennedy second.
And there was a request for previous roll, hearing no objections. We'll consider that board bill is heard and passed out of committee with due pass recommendation. I think that's everything for today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for your patience. As we're adjourning here, I've asked, the building division now sends down your building permits by ward for the year, kind of gives you a running total. I asked them to go ahead and run down one for the whole city, just to give everybody an idea, and it's kind of interesting to see. So I have those here if anybody's interested.